In the last decade of UFC history, a new wave of fighters have been taking the sport by storm. They're easily recognizable by their trademark beard, led by possibly one of the best ever, Khabib Nurmagomedov. The Dagestanis, as they're called, have been polarizing to say the least. They're either some of the most beloved or most hated in any division. But one of the biggest criticisms that I've seen about them online is actually a curious one. People complain that they get favorable treatment by the UFC. With Umar Nurmagomedov fight coming up that some say don't even deserve, and the releasing of Makhachev that serves as a counter argument to that point. I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it since we have two sides of the same coin happening in the same week. So are they treated better? Let's take the major names in each division of the UFC. Flyweight, we had Makhachev. Bantam, we now have Umar. Featherweight, we have Evloev. Lightweight, Islam Makhachev. Welterweight, we might have Islam too, and we used to have Hamza. Middleweight, we now have Hamza, and even though he's Chechen, I don't fucking know, most people group them together. And Shara the Bullet, who's actually the newcomer. At heavyweight, we have Magomed Ankalaev. And heavyweight, we have the GOAT, Shamil Gaziev. So let's analyze each of these fighters one by one, their UFC resume, and the way they've been treated by the company. So let's start with the man of the hour, the one everyone talks about right now, Makhachev. Makhachev is a strange case because until the last flyweight title fight, I really felt like he was going to get some of that Dana privilege. But when Dana chose to give the shot to Usyk rather than him, I knew something was up. He's 7-0 in the UFC, undefeated. Although not always the most entertaining, rarely do you see that type of profile get kicked out of the UFC. 4 wins by submissions, 3 by decision, and he's also been pretty active. And after his finish over Tim Elliott, we all thought he was gonna get the chance to fight for the title since, Pantoja didn't really have anyone to fight. But then he had to fight Paris, and that completely blew his stock. And now with all the problem that he's been causing and his last 2 fights being complete snooze fest, I think that whatever potential he had to get that Dana privilege is now gone. And right now, he definitely doesn't have it. He's not even in the company anymore. And he hasn't had it for his past few fights. Now, for a more interesting one. Moving up 1 weight class, Umar Nurmagomedov, also the man of the hour. He's facing off against Corey Sandhagen this weekend. Now for him, the case is a bit different, and I'm gonna be honest, he does not deserve it. He does not deserve that shot at #1 contendership. Umar is one of the most frustrating fighters I've ever watched. Not necessarily by his fighting style, but by his inactivity and entitlement. He's 5-0 in the UFC, 3 finished, 2 decisions. He just went to a decision with a guy making his debut, who, granted, had a name that most hardcore fans could recognize, but he wasn't even in the UFC yet. And Umar went to a pretty boring decision, even got dropped, and after all of this, he got the chance to fight Corey Sandhagen, the clear unofficial #1 contender. And what did he do? He pulled out. And then had the audacity to ask for either a title shot or another #1 contender fight. And what did the UFC do? They gave it to him. So for this one, I'm sorry, but this guy has clear Dana White privilege. And it's only because of his affiliation with Khabib and all those guys. The guy has 5 fights in 4 years, pulled out many times, doesn't look that impressive to warrant that kind of hype, and already fumbled his big jump up in the rankings. But he still gets it. You know that if it was any other fighter doing this, Dana would call him out publicly and say, the guy just doesn't want to fight, man. So Umar, although he might be pretty good, I don't doubt that, definitely benefits from that last name. Not once do they talk about him without bringing up Khabib. And without Khabib, he wouldn't get any of those favors. So Umar definitely has that privilege. Moving up again, Evloev. Tricky one. I'm gonna be straight up. I think he's earned his spot. I don't really think he had any noticeable push from the UFC, and if he gets past Sterling at 307, he more than deserves his title shot. Now the thing with Movzar is that he's painfully average. Not necessarily skill-wise, he's good, he's a #1 contender, but he does not leave a mark or impression whatsoever. His most memorable fight is the one with Lopez, and we remember it because of how Lopez impressed everybody. So no, Movsar doesn't really have privilege. He didn't skip over anyone in line. We're still probably gonna get the Max title fight and the Volk title fight before he gets his, and he's still being forced to fight contenders like Aljamain, and he'll have to earn his shot. You know damn well that if that was Umar, they would have pushed that title shot right after that Arnold Allen decision. But for him, he still needs more, so no privilege for the boy Movsar. Next up, the pound for pound great, Islam Makhachev. Oof, this one is debatable. I don't think anyone can say anything about him now, since he proved his dominance again and again, and he has multiple title defense. So to see if he does have the privilege, we'll have to look at his rise rather than his reign, since now he's already established. So did Islam get privilege on the come up? I'd say his real run to the title started with the Drew Dober win. He finished him impressively, twisted him up. Did the same to Moses in the 4th round, but struggled a bit more. Then ran through Dan Hooker, who was basically a layup matchup, and King Green, Bobby Green, whatever the fuck his name is, who stepped up on short notice. Was that enough to warrant a title shot? I'll say yes. In the best scenario, you would have had to face Beneil before getting it, but the fight was just cursed. They each pulled out at once, and when Beneil pulled out and Green had to step in, Charles was already done running through his contenders, so we needed that matchup. He was visibly there skill-wise. The only issue could have been like a meritocratic ones. Did he deserve it over some of the other contenders? But skill-wise, he was there, and everybody knew it. So I'd say Islam did have a nice path to the title, and he did get a lot of push from the UFC and from Daniel Cormier and from everyone else because of his affiliation with Khabib. And he would have been forced to fight Beneil before getting that shot if it was anyone else. But perfect timing mixed with flawless performances made the UFC give him a shot, and he made the most out of it. So he was definitely favored, but I don't think it's privilege, because at the end of the day, he was booked to fight contenders. The fights just never transpired. And for welterweight, I'm putting him too. Like, again, I think he's very close to getting that welterweight shot. And if he gets it now, it's not warranted in my opinion. But with a win over Arman, he doesn't have much to do until new contenders arrive. Maybe Max Holloway, but he's still a featherweight. So if he gets that welterweight shot after Arman, it wouldn't be a case of privilege. It just would be, it would be deserved. At middleweight, I'd say the new kid on the block right now is Umar Nurmagomedov. I think it's still too early to tell if he has the Dana White privilege since he's only had 2 fights in the UFC, but depending on the result of this weekend, we might see him get a huge bump in competition. I don't think Ikram was favored, since the only reason he got the Whitaker fight is because he stepped up. And for Hamza, yes, he's not daggy, but he fits the profile, you know he does. And back then he was getting pushed and pushed, but now I feel like his privilege is fading away. At one point we thought he'd get a title shot in 3 divisions. And now it doesn't seem like he's anywhere near the title picture in any division. But that's for right now, until he fights again at least, and this time against a middleweight contender. The thing with Hamza is that we know that one win against Paulo Costa, let's say, is going to give him a shot, which doesn't make sense for any other contender. Paulo Costa is not the fucking title gatekeeper, but if he beats him, they're going to give it to him. So he's definitely still privileged a bit. Now, for Poitin division, light heavyweight, the most notable name of that bunch is definitely Evloev, whose resume right now is kind of weird, to be honest. A lot of issues when he fights. Either he goes to a no contest, or the draw with Blachowicz, or another foul with Johnny Walker that results in a no contest. All that to say that Magomed's best wins are Smith and Walker. But people act like he's the undeniable #1 contender, that he can't be denied. 2 of his last 3 fights have gone sideways, draw and no contest, and then finally a win over Johnny Walker. That doesn't scream a title shot to me, but everyone pushes him because of his Dagestani look. Oh, he's the wrestling god of that division. He's not even that crazy wrestler that everyone thinks he is, but I don't even really mind it. Alex Pereira has beaten the rest of the top 5, so might as well let them fight. But let's not act like he's undeniable. So yes, he definitely has that Dagestani privilege, because he hasn't been that impressive, but still gets put on a pedestal, even being favorite against Alex. I don't mind it though. Now, heavyweights. Doesn't have that many of them, but they only need one, and he's the chosen one. Shamil the GOAT Gaziev. Heavyweight has never been the toughest division to break through, and so I wasn't surprised when he got the Rosenstruck fight. A few good performances in that division can put you on the map. So he's not being treated any different from any other successful heavyweight. The rise of Cyril Gane, for example, has been pretty fast because he was consistently winning. So no, Gaziev doesn't have special privilege, but if he wins this weekend, I hope he gets the title shot. Put him against Jones. Fuck Haspinall. So we've gone through every division and their notable names one by one. And I think that's enough to build an opinion, at least my opinion. Do I think that being part from that group favors them? Yes. I think that Khabib set his standards, and now everyone who comes from that place and has that look is held to certain expectations, and the UFC definitely capitalized on that. Umar, for example, is not deserving of a #1 contender fight. Islam was semi-deserving of that lightweight shot, even though we knew he was there skill-wise. Beneil arguably should have gotten in before him. Hamza was getting pushed like crazy until the Burns fight because the performances matched up. But now in middleweight, if they end up giving him a shot, it's definitely privilege. And light heavy, people hype up Ankalaev just for his look and accent, because if you look at the resume, it's not that impressive. And Shamil is the GOAT, so I've got none to say. But that's my opinion. That's what I think. Let me know yours and maybe educate me if I missed some. Until then, stay safe.